Is the mic live? Yes. Hello, welcome. My name is, yes. My name is Wendy Chapkus. I'm a faculty member here at USM in the Women and Gender Studies program in Sociology Department. And I am so thrilled to see so many of us here tonight. Clearly, we're all in need of a conversation about resistance, resilience, and renewal. So thank you for being here. Ooh, that light is bad. I wanted to first thank a few people and just do some housekeeping stuff. As you might have noticed, there are refreshments. If you didn't notice because you couldn't get that far into the room, in that back corner there are cupcakes and coffee and water and various other treats, cheese and crackers back there, so make your way over there. Also, there are assessment forms that you were given as you came in. If you just fill those out before you leave, it helps us show that these events matter, and boy, these events clearly matter. And I also wanted to draw your attention to two events that are happening tomorrow. From 4 to 6 tomorrow, there will be a protest rally against Trump's anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant executive orders. So 4 to 6 tomorrow at City Hall. And at 6:30 tomorrow night on this campus in Hannaford Hall, there's a free screening of the film 13th, which is the Oscar-nominated film about mass incarceration and racial inequality in the U.S. All right, first I wanted to thank our co-sponsors. That is Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. Woo! The Jean Byers Sampson Center for Diversity in Maine. The USM's Office of the Provost. And Women and Gender Studies. You don't have to applaud for everybody that I'm going to name because there's a list here, but I wanted to give my most deep appreciation to the two key organizers of tonight's event. That's Kathy Barberitz and Gabe Demain. We do get to applaud them. And also sincere appreciation to Coffee by Design that donated the coffee, Rosemary Erb, who together with Gabe Demain made the cupcakes for tonight, Pickwick Independent Press, who created that beautiful poster, if you've seen it, it's a letterpress poster, WMPG Radio, in particular Jessica Lockhart, who helped create the soundscape for tonight, and for help with postering and promotion of the event, Chad Brown, Olivia Tryon-Nadeau, and Caden Flynn. So thank you to all of them. Before we move into the storytelling, we have a welcome from our provost, our fabulous provost, Janine Uzi, who is here someplace. I saw Janine. Right. Oh, there's Janine.
I'm in the shadows. Thanks. Maybe I should take this down a little bit. Hi, everybody. My name's Janine Uzi. I'm the provost at USM, and I have the great honor of having the Women and Gender Studies program and its fabulous director, Lisa Walker, report directly to me. And that's unusual in the scope of many Women and Gender Studies programs across the country. People ask me all the time, why isn't Women and Gender Studies where it should be in a department? Why isn't it stuck in a college? And if we needed to ask that question before November, we don't need to ask it anymore. And that's because the mission of Women and Gender Studies is so far beyond one department or one college that USM says this important program should report directly to the Chief Academic Officer. And it's one of the things that I think really sets USM apart and makes me very proud to be part of USM as opposed to all the other wonderful academic institutions that we could be affiliated with. So that makes me very proud. And I also have to tell you that after the election, in the morning when I was putting my weeping children on the bus and I was trying to make them feel better, what I said to them and what I keep coming back to all the time is, we all here are in the right profession, education, because that's what this country needs. And it's really pretty plain and simple, education. And so we are all in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And if you were marching last weekend, you are also doing the right thing. And if you're marching tomorrow, you're also doing the right thing. And then before I turn this over to people who have much more knowledge than I do about these topics, I want to just thank Wendy. And I want to tell you that in many ways, Wendy has been a mentor to me because I came here a junior faculty member, and I looked to people like Wendy to mentor me as I was learning how to be a professor. So I'm very grateful to Wendy. And I want to tell you that I take credit in part for the fact that she's still here, because Wendy is in great demand from Texas to Maine, and we managed to keep her here, and that's a crucial part of she is a crucial part of our community. So hand for Wendy. Thank you. And I just have to finish by saying this crowd brought to you by Gabe. Who was right there but is no longer. So anyway, rock on. Thank you.
So we were going to go in alphabetical order, but I'm jumping ahead so I can get mine done and just revert to being your MC for tonight. I did want to let you know that Rachel Talbot Ross just texted me from Augusta, where she is stuck because the governor is threatening to veto some legislation. So the legislature is staying in session tonight. So it's quite unlikely she's going to make it back in time to join us. We'll grab her for a future Say Now event. Put down my glasses. So I've been torn all day about which story to tell you. I have a couple of those touchstone stories that get me through hard times. And as I was thinking about them, they all sadly relate to war. One of them is about how I survived the 1991 invasion of Iraq. As you'll recall, that was Operation Desert Storm. And the other one is about how I survived the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So, but both of them are uplifting. So I'm still trying to, I think what I will do is tell you the story that I told at one of the last Hear Tell storytelling events that Elise Pepples organized. We're very indebted to her. This room is indebted to her work in this community organizing storytelling nights. And before she left for Texas, she invited me to tell a story. And it was about, the theme that night was camp. And I thought, oh, I have a camp story. So in 2001, of course, the Twin Towers came down. And like everyone in this room, I'm sure, I was traumatized not only by the act of terrorism, but also by the really belligerent and militaristic response to that. And especially unnerved as it became clear that the George W. Bush administration was intent on invading Iraq, a country that had nothing to do with the 9/11 attack. And so, like many of you, I'm sure I hit the streets, I hit the phones, I emailed, I did everything that I could do to try to stop that war from happening. And on October 10th, 2002, I was driving to Vermont with my dear friend Lorraine Carroll and my partner Gabe Demain, and we were listening to NPR. And that was the day that the Congress and the Senate were debating whether to give Bush the authorization to invade. And as we drove, it became clear that there weren't enough Democratic votes to override the very strong support from the Republican Party for the invasion. And I was becoming more and more and more distressed and sinking deeper and deeper into despair. I thought, if we can't stop this war built on such a set of lies and misrepresentations, then how are we ever going to stop a war? Anyway, it was quite clear by the time we arrived in Vermont that the war was going to be authorized. And I was also noticing I was edgy because we were going somewhere I had never been before, a place called Fairy Camp Destiny. Sounded good. It was created by gay men, for gay men, as a sanctuary. And we had been invited, the three of us cisgender girls, more or less cisgender girls, to join them for a 3-day gathering at Destiny. And I thought, are we really going to be welcome? Well, we pull into the dirt parking lot and we start to unpack our sleeping bags and our tents in a rainy, gray, cold day. And somebody starts walking towards us wearing very little more than glitter. And he goes, "Women, welcome!" And I thought, oh, okay, we're welcome here. And we set up our tent, and despite the fact that for 3 solid days it rained and it was gray and it was cold, it didn't stop these fabulous fairies from walking around in gowns dragged through the mud and creating bonfires to keep us all warm and delicious meals and wonderful rituals. And I could feel my spirit come back to me. I was no longer obsessed with what was going on in Washington, D.C., and what was the next horror ahead. And it was clear to me that at exactly the same moment that horror was happening at the hands of our so-called leaders, another world was happening at the same moment. And it was magnificent. It was creative and fierce and beautiful and powerful. And I was a part of that world too. And it really made clear to me that it's not just, as the slogan goes, another world is possible. Another world is happening right now in this room, right now, at the same moment that decisions are being made that we are going to do our damnedest to stop or repair. But in the meanwhile, we need to be able to let go of what the fairies call the default reality and enter into the reality of the fairies and the freaks and the artists. We need to be able to retreat and then take that energy back out into the world. About 6 months after that wonderful experience at Fairy Camp Destiny, we were back in Portland, and Lorraine and I were sitting on the street in front of Susan Collins' office, that horrific building on Middle Street, because her door was locked to her constituents, and we were not allowed to go in and petition her on the eve of shock and awe. And so we just simply sat down in the streets and spent that night in the Cumberland County Jail. And in that moment, too, I dug deep and remembered that I'm a part of a legion of fabulous, fierce, loving activists. And we took that energy with us into jail and reminded each other, and thank you for all of you being here, to remind me that in this very bleak, bleak moment, we are not alone and we are wonderful. Thank you. So our next storyteller is Sameh Abdurakib. Since 2010, Sameh has organized with a variety of local and state social justice organizations, including facilitating discussions through the Maine Humanities Council and the Southern Maine Workers Center, and she's presently employed with the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence.
There we go. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. How y'all doing? All right. So I spent a long time trying to think about what story I was going to share and the theme of the story, because stories should have themes, right? So there is a T.S. Eliot poem called The Wasteland. At the end of the poem, one of the sections is called What the Thunder Said, and it ends with this line, "These are the fragments I shore against my ruins." And so that is the theme, mostly because I want to be able to quote T.S. Eliot. But it's relevant. It's relevant. So some of you in this room know this. Some of you may not know this, but I am a cancer patient. I was diagnosed with an extremely rare cancer in louder. I'm just gonna. Okay. I might. Turn up the volume on the system. I don't. If you say it like that, that sounds different. Turn up the volume on the system. I don't know how to do that. All right, I'll just try to talk louder. I'll just lean in. I'll just talk louder. I'm gonna lean in like that. All right. All right. Many of you in this room know this, but some of you may not know this. I'm a cancer patient. I was diagnosed with an extremely rare cancer in the summer of 2015, and I'm talking like extremely like boutique type cancer, like really, really rare. And the story I'm going to share is about the diagnosis time. So my diagnosis took a very long time. It took about 2 months to get an accurate diagnosis. So I started in June, beginning of June of 2015, didn't have a diagnosis until July of 2015. So I had scans the very first week of June, and then the second week of June is when I got the call. The second week of June was also the weekend of the gay pride parade. And those of you who know how gay pride works in Portland, Friday is the Dyke March, Saturday is the parade. I go to the Dyke March every year, I think since I've lived here mostly, because I like to march among my people. And I usually don't go to the gay pride parade, but this year I was doing the whole thing. I was going to go to the parade, the Dyke March on Friday. I was going to go, I was asked to speak at an interfaith session at the UU Church on Congress on Saturday morning. And then I was going to march with the Southern Maine Worker Center, my organizing home, Saturday at the march. So I had the scans done, and I get the call Friday, the day of the Dyke March. I wasn't quite prepared for that call, right? As many of us probably aren't. And the call went something like this. My primary care physician called and said, you know, oh, and I was with my partner, Jen, who was in the audience. And she, this was going to be her first Dyke March. She's from New Hampshire, and she was coming up, and we were going to march together. It was going to be glorious. So we were together, sitting in my living room, and the call came in, and I put her on speakerphone. My primary care physician said to me, the scans show that you have several lesions. I don't know why you call them that. Just tell me what they are. But lesions. Don't know exactly what the type of cancer. You're going to have to get a biopsy to figure out what type of cancer it is. Most likely it's gynecological. Side note, she had no idea. She shouldn't have told me that because it was not. And we're probably going to just get you into a surgeon, and then we'll take care of it. So there's a weird thing that happens when you get a diagnosis like this or information like this, right? Like everything stops for a moment because you don't know how to find your way forward. And that's where I was. I was unsure of what to do, unsure of how to be, unsure of even how to tell people. I texted my family, which is not a thing that you say in a text message, I understand. But that is, honestly, that's kind of how my family operates. My father sent us a text message when he was getting remarried. This is what we do. Anyway, I texted my family. I texted my friend Drew, just the word cancer. Drew called me back immediately, and I didn't know what to say, so I kind of got off the phone. So Jen and I, hang on a second, sorry. All right, so Jen and I made the decision that we would not go to the Dyke March, which was kind of a heartbreaking decision, but I didn't know how I could be in the world. So I don't remember what we did that night, but it probably just involved sitting on the couch, crying, and being uncertain. But at some point, I had to decide whether or not I was going to go honor my commitments, right? I told the folks at the UU Church on Congress, I told them that I would speak some words, and I had written up words about faith and about love and mercy and all these things, and they had already made the program. But I just couldn't imagine doing it. And you know, Jen, who is wonderful and supports me whatever my decision was going to be, she was very supportive. But I remember at some point in that night, I'm going to quote some poetry because that's what I like to do. At some point in that night, do you guys know Lucille Clifton? right? All right, so she's got that poem, this poem that's called Come Celebrate With Me. All right, and it's a beautiful poem. It starts with Come celebrate with me this life that I have created, something like that, paraphrasing. She talks about being black, she talks about being a woman. And then she ends with saying, come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Something has tried to kill me and has failed. So I went to bed with that poem on my heart, and I got up and I decided to honor my commitments, not just because they'd printed the program. That was honestly part of it, honestly. But because I'm a very private person. It's really hard to be private in Maine, but I am a very private person. But I wanted to be around people who loved me and affirmed me and who were, who reflected me. So I decided to go speak. And this was a pivotal moment for me because it helped shape how I was going to be in this illness and how I was going to move forward. I decided to invite 3 people to this talk at the UU Church because I was like, I'm not going to be the only Muslim there. I'm not going to be the only black person there. And this is Maine. The odds of that happening are very high. So I invited 3 people. I invited Hani Ali. You guys know Hani? Yes? She's not here anymore. She's in Minnesota. But Hani Ali, Hamdi Hassan, and Idman. All right? And there's my girls, too. I don't know who said that. So I got up and I said the words that I said, and they were beautiful words. Sat down next to those 3 women, and I was not prepared to do this, but out of nowhere, I just turned to them and I told them, I just want to let you know, I just got this diagnosis. Well, it's not a diagnosis, but that they found tumors, probably cancerous. It's going to be okay. And I said it kind of factual because I'm a Scorpio. I have a lot of feelings, but I am very practical, very rational. I said it just like that. This is what it is. And I was not prepared for the response. One of them broke into tears. I was not prepared. I broke into tears. They all just started grabbing me and hugging me. And in that moment, something shifted for me because I realized that there's no way that I could do this by myself. I realized that I need to try to move through this with the people who I see as my community, So I marched that day with the Worker Center. I think Idman and Hani marched with me. I don't really remember exactly. Yeah, all right. We chanted that Black Lives Matter. I marched with Drew. I had my arm around Drew. And in those moments, I was surrounded by this intense feeling of love and connection and support. And it was that day that I decided that I was not going to be private about this illness, this disease, which is a big deal for me, right? This is a very big deal for me. So, it was the right decision. I've been in treatment now. I'm still in treatment because it goes on forever. That's what it feels like. I've gone through multiple modes of treatment, and every single time, I get to that place where I feel like I need to be in isolation because it's just a lot. I remember that this is not who I am. This is not who I am. I'm here to be among my people, to love my people, and to have that love reflected back to me. And because of that day, that was just a pivotal day. So I'm going to end with, I'm terrible at endings, you guys. I'm terrible at endings. But this is going to be great. So there's this poem by Sonia Sanchez. She's a black arts poet. She was a poet during she's still alive, she's still a poet, but she first started publishing poetry during the Black Arts Movement. And I came to this, she has a poem called Poem at 30, and I came to this poem when I was in my 20s, and it resonates with me so deeply. The first part of the poem, she talks about, when she reads her poetry, she closes her eyes, and it is reverent, like it is just beautiful. But in this poem, in the first part of the poem, she talks about how she is constantly traveling. And then she has this line about, I want to tell you about me and about nights on a brown couch where I wrapped my bones in lint and refused to move. And that part has always meant something to me because most of my life I have been a person who does a lot of things, but then gets slowed down by things like depression and things like anxiety. This is our story. So many people have these stories, right? The very end of the poem, and here's how it will close because it means something different to me now. The very end of the poem, she says, if I don't remember this, I'm going to have to read, so I apologize. But she says, I'm going to read it. I don't remember it. She says, Father, do not send me out among strangers. You black man, stretching, scraping the mold from your body. Here is my hand. I am not afraid of the night. And I just want to end on that because that's perfect. Thank you.
Next, oops, this is. Next is Lisa Bunker, who is a trans activist and author. For 30 years, Lisa worked in non-commercial broadcasting, most recently as the program director of our very own WMPG. Her new novel is called Felix, is it Y? Is, okay, Felixyz, look for it. From Viking Press, it'll be released in June of 2017.
Hello, lovely humans. I'm really glad to be back in Portland. I was program director of WMPG for 14 years until last year. Great job, fabulous job, amazing radio station. I moved because of two miracles. I finally met my one. And I also sold that book. Finally, after 4 decades of trying to break into the world of writing for a living, I got my lucky break. And so now I live in Exeter, New Hampshire with the love of my life, and I'm writing full time, which is marvelous. Thank you. But I love this city, and it's so much fun to come back and see so many familiar and friendly faces. I've completely changed my mind in the last 24 hours what story I want to tell here tonight. I've been thinking about a lot of different kinds of activism. I've been participating in as many of them as I could. Marching, making phone calls, writing, signing online petitions, educating myself, connecting with other people, joining mailing lists. I've done all of these things. And then there's also the just plain connecting with other humans kind of activism, especially important, I think, considering how divided our nation has become and how invested people in power have become in perpetrating that divide and getting us to see each other as cartoonish villains to be vilified and fought against. And I hate that. So I want to talk about some neighbors. So I live with Dawn in Exeter. We live in a condo. We have a 4-unit condo. And shortly after I moved in last April, one of the other families moved out and a new family moved in. And my first impression of our new neighbors was their vehicles. They're a married couple. They have matching his and hers Jeep SUVs. His is black, hers is gray. His has, over the headlights, there's this kind of flangey sort of thing mounted over them that makes them look like angry eyes. And she has these enormous, flary, false eyelashes over the headlamps of her Jeep. They both have gun owner stickers on the backs of their Jeep. He's got an NRA sticker. She's got, among many others, a picture of Hello Kitty holding an assault rifle. And so, a little wary, not having met them. My first encounter with the male half of the couple was he pulled up to, I don't know, do stuff related to moving in, and I saw him and we had a nice chat. He came across as a very friendly man on the surface, affable, warm, smiled a lot, said my name rather more than I'm used to having people do in conversation, and very nice in a superficial, on the surface way, but I couldn't get any kind of read on what was underneath there. Met his wife for the first time. She seemed nice. There was a little bit of awkward uncomfortableness early because there was this fuss about something between whether it was their job or the condo's job to do a thing in the garden, and he got fractious about it early. Excuse me. I'm getting over the virus that's been going around. And he got kind of edgy about it early, talked about suing, like, you know, the first thing you do when you move into a new condo, talk about suing. But, you know, there's other edgy people in the condo, too. There's the lady upstairs who just sees everything in a negative light, et cetera. It's fine. Other early impressions, they have a tiny little dog, one of those little yappy dogs. He likes to smoke cigars. They'd sit out when the days were still warm on their little porch and smoke cigars and sip wine. So I was trying to get a more nuanced than first impression reading of these people. There was a time when all of a sudden, if we were passing each other in the driveway, he would avert his eyes, he wouldn't catch my eyes. And I read that as he'd figured out that I was trans. He is certainly a type of man who I have experienced over time is more uncomfortable with trans people often. Not drawing any blanket conclusions, but there is a pattern there. But that went away again after a while. There was another sort of kerfuffle in a condo meeting, but I don't go to those. Dawn does. God bless her. So it was fine. And there's some other things to consider. He has, for example, a handicap parking tag on the rearview mirror of his truck. Some kind of story there, I guess. I don't know what it is, but if we ever have a conversation about real things, I might like to ask him about that, especially since I know that he works as a master plumber on a major construction site somewhere in South Boston. These are very hard-working people. They both have 2-hour commutes. They get up at 4 in the morning and drive away every day. That's another thing we know about them. They're hard-working Americans. Another interesting factor to consider, I've been introduced to visiting children and grandchildren, some with fair faces, some with dark faces, and bonus points if you made no assumptions about the races of these people. He is white and she is black, and they have a blended family. So there's a story there too, apparently, if we ever get to have a conversation beyond the most shallow level. There is also this to consider. When I get that doomy feeling that I sometimes get these days, and I start imagining dark imaginings about the worst possible outcomes of this balance point that we find ourselves in as a country, and I start thinking about scenarios that involve things like suspension of the Constitution and loyalty oaths and citizen militias. When I get into that black space, which I try to avoid as much as possible, one of the scenarios I imagine involves the knock on the door and the person knocking is him with a gun in his hand. I've imagined that. Upon reflection, I hate imagining that about a neighbor of mine. And I feel like, to a certain extent, it's on me to get to know him well enough that I can't imagine that anymore. Because once again, there's this divide, and I've worked really hard as a transgender person to get people to see me as something more than just a label or a stereotype. And I think it's important for me also to try to see past my assumptions and stereotypes about people like him and understand him as a complicated human. So, excuse me. Thank you. So I had a conversation this morning with Dawn, and we talked about these things that I'm talking to you about right now, and she said, so what do you want to do, invite them to dinner? And I said, that just us two and them two together in a room for a long time, maybe a little bit too much potential for awkwardness there. I said, well, what about when the weather gets warm? Let's throw a come-as-you-are barbecue for the whole condo, all 4 families. Come, bring what you want to grill, bring what you want to drink, let's hang out on the back porch and talk. Okay, she said, let's do that. But then she said, why wait until then? All right, let's do a potluck. Let's do a condo potluck. When can we do it? Next week. So we are now in the planning stages to invite the 4 families of our condo to come to us for an evening. Bring something, a side or a dessert, and what you want to drink. And let's just hang out and talk and see if we can get to know each other a little bit more. And that's one of the kinds of activism that I have participated in this week. Something else I've been doing this week is I've been writing a poem. I've written it and rewritten it and rewritten it, and I am changing so fast right now as a writer and as an activist and as a person, a citizen of this country, that I couldn't memorize the latest version in time, so pardon the paper, but I want to end with this. This is slam style poetry, so if you feel moved to call out, please do that. Do the snap if you want, whatever you like. Here we go. This is called Patriot Song. Despite recent developments, or rather because of them, I feel the need to mention at this time that I too am an American, and that I too love the United States of America. I don't mean the garbled mirage that the malignant narcissist and his band of proto-fascists want to sell us as the new, improved, crispy fried coating on the same old tired thigh and drumstick of fear and hate. No. I'm talking about I love grand, messy, democratic experiment, America. Refuge from the world's tyrannies, America. Huddled masses yearning to breathe free, America. Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native, all ethnicities, as well as white America. Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, all faiths, as well as Christian America. Green, Democratic, Libertarian, all parties, as well as Republican America. Poor and middle class, as well as rich. Immigrant, as well as born here. Disabled, as well as able-bodied. Female, as well as male. Gay, as well as straight. Trans, as well as cis America. I'm talking about I love America of the hard workers, America of the good neighbors, America of the decent people just trying to live right, take care of their own, give something back, and maybe have a little fun every once in a while. And if I were monarch of the world, which I'm so glad I'm not, but if I were, I'd say, oh, people, we have just come through some ugly times. Words have been exchanged, so it's time for a nationwide block party. Bring the food you know how to cook best, the music you most love to dance to, your best stories, and whatever you want to drink. And hey, Trump vote in America, this invite totally includes you too. We can sing drunken karaoke and compare tattoos, argue baseball and top 10 movie lists, sample each other's favorite recipes, and maybe have a nice game of cribbage. How about best 2 out of 3? You bring the cards, I'll bring the board. Just one thing. Whatever you might think of bringing along in the way of fear and hate, gotta ask you to leave that at the gate. And then you are as welcome as everyone else. Seriously. The party won't be complete until you show. Times are tough and we've all been working our asses off, so we all deserve to cut loose a little now. Won't you please join us? We'd love to have you join us. Those stars on our flag, how about you be one of them, I'll be another, and all the rest of these lovely humans can be the rest. That's how we get us a new glory we can all love together.
Our next storyteller is a student at USM, Noelle Leah, who's a political science major. She's currently an intern at the Muskie School of Public Service and working with Portland Empower. She's also a board member of the Maine Children's Alliance and a USM student body senator. Noelle.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. So I too have thought of a lot of stories to share with you all. I'm going to share an everlasting story that started when I was in 5th grade. Just a little background history. My family is from South Sudan, and I grew up right here in Portland. I came here when I was in 3rd grade, so I know the city in and out. Anyhow, so back in 2005, we lived over there on Grant Street, and I used to play all the time at the park right across the street. And one sunny day in June. I was done playing, so I was just like heading back home, and there was cops everywhere. That wasn't the first time I had seen cops or anything, and so like I was just like, oh, whatever. I'm just gonna head home. But little did I know that the cops were in my house, and that from that day until 2013, my life was gonna be really difficult. So you can imagine, I was in 5th grade, still learning English, still trying to figure out the system, also very young. But basically what happened was, so in my family, this is really hard because this is like a big room. So as I said, my whole family, we're just trying to figure out the system, and unfortunately, my father has a drinking issue, and there had already been history in the in the family of violence and so forth. And basically, this time around, he dropped my little sister by accident. And if any of you guys know, you guys probably read the news article, but basically what happened, he dropped her by accident. He went to jail. But the moral of the story is the communication that did not take place. And so, as an immigrant like family, we, for one, there has to be a translator. And to have a translator in this situation is really difficult because these are very crucial times. I mean, like, he dropped her, so therefore that's very serious. But it's also very serious that you recognize that it was an accident and that there was alcohol involved and that maybe he should get mental like treatment and like all these other things. But the fact of the matter is, like, what happened is that he went to court. He had already had history, so it was he had a lawyer who basically told him that he should plead guilty because of how much money my family was going to have to go through. And like now being a I don't even think you have to be a political science major. Like, immigrants have it so much harder. Like, you can't just tell. No, like he should have had an immigration lawyer. He should have had somebody explain to him that, like, if you do plead guilty, like, your case is most likely gonna go federal as fast as it could, and that's exactly what happened. And so from that time on, I became the advocate for the family. And so I don't know how many lawyers I've met. I don't know how many days of school I've missed to go to. Okay. To go, thank you. To go and try to stand up for my dad. Also recognizing that he made a mistake, but really, like, being in a room where, like, literally nobody wants to look at you as a child. Nobody wants to look at you like, what will it mean if your father isn't around? So the reason I'm sharing this is because for everything that's going around about deportation, I just want to say that, like, it just hurts because every time you think of, like, separating a family, like, even if you deport the parents and leave the kids here, guess what? Like, the kids are the future of this country, so you should probably, like, consider, like, taking care of them where they're at like, freaking 5th grade or whatever grade they're in. Anyhow, we fought very hard, and fortunately, because my family's from South Sudan, there's a war going on. They couldn't deport him because, like, he came from war. You're not gonna take him back to war. I appreciate America for that. Don't deport my dad. But basically, he's here now. I'm just sharing that because even though he was in jail all these years, he inspired me. And, like, his voice, the fact that I could talk to him, the fact that he actually came out, and through it all, I think I learned at a very young age to talk to old white men, and now I'm pretty confident, to be honest with you. So, it was difficult, but I just really urge that we think about things like that when we just so blatantly say, like, deport them. Like, come on, like, we're all human. All right, thank you.
So our last storyteller tonight is Sylvia Stormwalker. Sylvia Stormwalker is a transgender warrior, activist, and healer living in Portland. Environmental justice, youth empowerment, racial justice, queer and trans liberation, and patriarchy smashing form the core of her political work. She's currently a proud co-owner of a worker-owned house cleaning cooperative in Portland and is studying to be a clinical herbalist. Sylvia.
Crystal, will you give a whoop? Okay, great. That's my friend Crystal. She told me she'd hold up her hands and it would say, "You're not sucking," if I was feeling uncomfortable. But it's dark out there. Thank you. Okay, good. Hi, everybody. I'm Sylvia. How's the level of volume back there? Okay, great. I'm really grateful to be here. I've been thinking a lot about what I'm going to say. Seems to be the theme. And so in the spirit of taking care of myself, I just wanted to give a trigger warning that I'm going to be talking about sexual violence a little bit in my talk, and I want to give folks the chance to take care of yourselves and leave now or at any point. Also, I pee all the time, so if you need to leave during my talk, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, know that I'm trying to do the same, and thanks. Yeah, so, yeah. Also, it's hard to leave, I know, so it's packed. Okay, so after I was asked to speak, I was excited, and then I got scared. I was scared that my desire to present a with it kind of empowered, adventurous kind of story about my life, my desire to say something that was uplifting and fun would get in the way of showing up for myself about what my year has been like. And I was thinking about the word resilience, and I was feeling really intimidated by that word. Because I think the word, so I was trying to come up with a word. I was like, okay, so that's not a word that I can kind of build something around. And the word I was thinking about was humbled, the verb. So I went to my old Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. I still look up words the old-fashioned way. I know I look young, but I'm old at heart. And I looked up the definition number 2, the second definition of the second use of humble, and it was something like to have one's power, prestige taken away from you, and to be brought low. And I also saw that humble comes originally from the word humus, soil, and I sat with that, and I know all the stories in my life that have touched me and have made me feel like I can show up in the world seem to be from people who have taken hard experiences and somehow woven them into magic, like turning poison into medicine. And I didn't want to leave you all hanging, so I was sitting with the thought, okay, so humble, like feeling like really surprised at how challenged I've been But soil, I love soil. I identify with being a tree. I contain 2 tree spirits that travel around with me. And so I sat with that. And it felt hard to think about showing up in front of people when the theme of this last year, at least in terms of the way I want to show up in political work, has been more not showing up. And do I need to talk about, I think just I experienced, I guess, a cascading series of events involving really dear friends of mine being in abusive relationships and living with a couple of them, and also meeting an old perpetrator, and also being assaulted again this summer. And this fall, when I was having trouble showing up to do much at all, some really dear friends were in town from Minnesota, and they were in Massachusetts, and I just couldn't show up. I was going to go hang out with them, and I didn't, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything. But there was this workshop I was supposed to go to that I had committed to going to, and I managed to like drag myself. Well, I drove. I didn't. I got in the car and I drove down to Massachusetts, right around Samhain, the Halloween time, when the veil between the worlds, the living and the dead, is the thinnest. And I sat. I was late, which is another theme of my life. My sister says that I am continually unsuccessfully attempting to bend this space-time continuum. But I will someday, I think. And this teacher was talking about the connection between ecstasy and trauma, or putting out that question, like one trauma having one's being overwhelmed and that leading to greater isolation, and ecstasy being overwhelmed and that leading to greater connection. And so those have been the 2 things I've been sitting with. I've been sitting with, okay, humbled, and okay, ecstasy and trauma, and how to weave them into something for myself that I can carry forward as medicine, and also maybe as an offering here tonight. And so I asked everybody, I asked my friends, I asked my dreams, I asked my ancestors, and I had some funny dreams, but I don't know if, depending if you're a dreamer or what your relationship with your dreams, some feel like, oh, these are ones that have like some deep meaning, and some are like, oh yeah, that person is really cute, and that was fun. But I asked, and something popped into my mind, so I just wanted to tell a story from my life. In 2011, which feels threateningly close, it feels like it's more like 60 years ago, I one day was sitting there and was like, I don't know what this is, but I don't think I'm a boy. I don't know what I am, but it was a walking out into a great unknown. Like this, I felt like I was in a little box, and I could like see the door open, and there was this like gray, vast unknown, and I didn't know it lay out there. But eventually I was more afraid of not finding what was out there than sticking around and having to die inside. So it was also at this moment where I had this idea that if I just trusted in the universe, if I just listened to the intuition or like this voice inside, that something would happen that would change my life, or something good. And it's interesting to think back. So this is what I received, like that there was a time when the thought that I should trust my intuition was like almost like a thought experiment. Like, oh yeah, I think that if I do this, that would be good. Like that might work out, and it's amazing to think like, and so I did, and I gave away all my things. I broke up with my girlfriend of 4.5 years. I quit my job as a produce worker, and I maxed out my credit cards, and I like bought a backpack and donated money to some friends, and I got some, camping supplies, and I started walking down Route 1. I started walking from my childhood home in North Auburn, from my mom's house, who's here, and I walked down into Portland. I met some really cool people. I saw my future best friend. I have a lot of best friends here. You're all my best friend. But one of them, even though we didn't meet, and I remember I was looking for space from other people all my life. It felt like 110% of the time constantly trying to track what everyone else was thinking and expecting of me, and trying to meet that. And it felt overwhelming to be trying to do that, especially with my gender around other people. And also, I wanted to find something that undercut all the lies, that I could trust, that it felt like I could bring forward into direct action or whatever was required of me, that I could trust this cord, and that it could guide me. And so I found that. And yeah. I guess what I want to say is that being able to show up here tonight is a testament to the friends in my life who've been able to show up for me. And I don't really wish that a lot of things had happened to me in my life, but with support, those experiences have, I think, made me larger and opened up a lot of space inside. And so in this moment when a lot of people are becoming politicized for the first time and really excited, I think it's great. And I think it's really important that the people who have been through this shit are taken care of, because they're the ones who are going to be able to guide us through this. And so, yeah. So thanks. So really, less poetic ending than I thought, but not so bad, hey? Okay, thanks.
So once again, thank you all for coming. This is just a wonderful, wonderful turnout and a wonderful gathering. If you like tonight, we're going to be doing this again on February 9th. Not in this room, in Wish Camper 101, which is that glass building near the parking structure, or between here and the parking structure. It's also free and open to the public, also at 7 o'clock, also on a Thursday night, so February 9th. And we're going to be talking about why we won't go back. And women will be reporting, or women, men, and others will be reporting on their experiences at the marches that took place on January 21st, and what kind of actions we can take in the future based on that. Also, another reminder, tomorrow, 4 o'clock, City Hall, demonstration against Trump's executive orders targeting Muslims and immigrants. See you all there. Coffee and stuff in the back corner.